Hi again. History of Christianity by Kenneth Scott Latourette. We're on page 363. Developments in church discipline. This is in the Carolingian dynasties fading away and the ascendancy of the papacy. This period, he says about it, the Carolingian age saw not only intellectual activity but also important developments in the means which the church employed to further Christian living. It will be remembered that the rule for forgiveness of post-baptismal sins had been public confession, exclusion from the communion, and after the ecclesiastical authorities were satisfied with the penitent's sincerity, as shown by the performance of prescribed acts, public and formal restoration. This custom had been maintained in the West after it had been given up in the East. In the disorders attendant upon the breakup of the Roman Empire and the invasions, this form of discipline had been weakened or allowed to lapse. In place of it, there had come, as we have suggested, largely from Ireland and the Irish Peregrini, the practice of private confession to a priest. The latter prescribed to the sinner the works of penance, which must be performed before restoration to communion. The Irish penitentials, with their instructions to those hearing confessions, probably did much to regulate morals in a stormy age. However, early in the 9th century, the reformers in the Frankish realms began to condemn these penitentials as too much dependent upon the whims of the priests and as being unregulated by ecclesiastical authority. They sought, therefore, to renew public confession and restoration, and councils, bishops, and theologians pronounced in favor of them. Since great difficulty was encountered in persuading the guilty to undergo this prolonged and humiliating ordeal, efforts were made to improve the procedure of private confession. Private confession and penance were continued, but with more careful episcopal supervision. Books of directions for priests hearing confessions were prepared by bishops or under episcopal supervision, which sought to embody as much as possible of the earlier standards and practices of the Church. Now he has the new subhead, Declining Carolingian and Growing Papal Power. We have noted the fashion in which, from the time of Gregory the Great, the powers of the popes north of the Alps had markedly increased. This was due to several factors, among them the great ability of Gregory himself, the success of the Roman mission in England, culminating in Theodore of Tarsus, the Anglo-Saxon missionaries on the continent, loyal as they were to Rome, and the support accorded these missionaries by the early Carolingians. Pepin the Short and Charlemagne had protected the popes from the Lombards and local disorders in Italy, and had thereby enhanced their position. However, they too, and especially Charlemagne, were such powerful figures that they overshadowed the popes. While paying them deference, they used them for their purposes. When, after Louis the Pious, the power of the Carolingians declined, for a time that of the popes increased. This was partly because the Carolingians no longer dominated the popes. It was also because the bishops in the Carolingian domains looked to Rome for protection against the archbishops. We have seen how the numbers and authority of the archbishops had been augmented as a phase of the Carolingian reforms. So long as the throne was in the hands of Charlemagne, it was able to keep these functionaries in check. However, under the weaker rulers who followed, some of the archbishops seemed to the bishops to be overbearing and to be treating them as subordinate officials. Hincmar of Reims, that is Rheims, aggressive and masterful as he was, especially aroused opposition. The bishops called upon the popes for protection against their metropolitans. Then, too, as the authority of the Carolingian monarchs declined, lay lords infringed upon what many of the clergy held to be the rights of the Church, and the tendency was to look to Rome for support. It was at this time, and from the domain of Charles the Bald, perhaps from Mainz, or possibly from Reims, that the Isidorian Decretals were assembled. Partly genuine and partly spurious, this collection of documents was designed to curb the power of the metropolitans and the lay nobility by stressing the position of the papacy. The papal chair also had the advantage of being occupied by some very able men. The most eminent of these, Nicholas I, who was Pope from 858 to 867, we have already met in the conflict with the Byzantine wing of the Catholic Church, and have noted how vigorously he acted in that complex situation. In the West, he was appealed to by several of the Carolingians in their conflicts with one another. Like Charlemagne, but in a different manner, he sought to realize in history what he conceived to have been set forth in Augustine's De Civitate Dei, which is the city of God. He held that the church was superior to all secular rulers, that the Pope is the ruler of the church, and that the bishops are his subordinates, through whom he carries out his divinely commissioned functions. Nor were these convictions empty theories appealed to by a bishop whom Hincmar, as Archbishop of Reims, had deposed. He compelled the latter to restore him. In a notorious divorce case in which Lothar II, son of Lothar I, and great-grandson of Charlemagne, had obtained the consent of a synod in Metz to put away his wife, Thietberga, that he might marry a concubine, Nicholas forced Lothar to take back Thietberga and excommunicated 2 archbishops for siding with the king. He also made his will felt against an archbishop of Ravenna who claimed independence of the See of Peter. Next time, he has the ominous title, The Descent of Darkness. This is the approach of feudalism and that system taking over the middle of the Middle Ages from the 9th century onwards. Link for this one is Walter Rauschenbusch, a famous Baptist, the father of the social gospel, talking about the medieval church, and particularly the medieval view of the papacy and why its power became so universal in the Middle and Late Middle Ages. See you next time.